Have you ever wondered what no one talks about when it comes to female psychology? What if I told you there are subtle and primal truths about a woman's body, especially something as overlooked as her nipples that carry deep psychological meaning? Not in a superficial or sensational way, but grounded in biology, behavior, and unconscious attraction. Why do certain visual cues provoke such strong reactions in men? Why do some areas of the female body hold more psychological power than others? And why is this influence often misunderstood, even by women themselves? Today, we're not just discussing attraction, we're exploring the hidden science behind it. Because once you begin to understand how the female mind and body communicate beneath the surface, you don't just become more confident in relationships, you start to see human behavior with sharper clarity. Let's get into it. Most people assume that male attention to female nipples is purely sexual or cultural. But neuroscience tells a deeper story. The human brain is wired to respond to certain visual stimuli without conscious thought. When a man sees a woman's nipples, whether exposed subtly through clothing or during intimacy, his limbic system, the emotional and instinctive part of the brain, lights up. This reaction is not based on choice or preference. It is biological programming rooted in our evolutionary past. Nipples are among the few parts of the female body that serve a dual role, both as a nurturing signal and a sexual one. In early development, the presence of the nipple is associated with feeding and bonding. Later in life, the same visual cue becomes linked with sexual arousal and emotional connection. This creates a psychological overlap where comfort and desire coexist. The subconscious reads this signal as warmth, vitality, and responsiveness, qualities men are naturally drawn to. Evolutionary psychology supports this interpretation. For thousands of years, visual signs of fertility and softness have been used by the brain to make quick decisions about compatibility. The appearance of nipples, especially when subtly visible, acts as a silent indicator of femininity and health. What makes it more complex is that women are often unaware of how these cues are being interpreted by male observers. And men, in turn, often misread their own reactions, thinking it's purely about visual pleasure, when in fact it's about psychological recognition. The man who understands this is not controlled by it. He becomes an observer of his own biology. Instead of reacting blindly to these signals, he notices them with clarity and detachment. That level of awareness is what separates emotional maturity from impulsive behavior. It's not about avoiding desire, it's about mastering it. Because the man who can decode subconscious attraction while staying grounded is not only more self-aware, but also far more magnetic to women. The female chest is one of the most sensitive areas of the human body. But what many don't realize is that this sensitivity is not just physical. It's deeply emotional and psychological. Touch, temperature, even subtle visual stimulation in this region activates complex emotional responses in the female brain. That's because the chest is wired into both the sensory nervous system and the emotional memory centers. For a woman, this area is closely tied to vulnerability, affection, and deep trust. Studies in effective neuroscience show that female nipple stimulation activates more than just pleasure centers. It also lights up the same regions of the brain associated with emotional bonding, particularly oxytocin release. Oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone, creates a sense of connection and comfort. This means when a woman is touched in this area, especially by someone she trusts, her entire emotional landscape can shift. What seems purely physical on the outside is, internally, a deeply emotional experience. This explains why many women don't respond well to aggressive or mechanical behavior toward this part of their body. Their psychological wiring expects intention, care, and presence. If those are missing, the experience becomes jarring instead of intimate. It's not just about technique, it's about emotional intelligence. A man who is disconnected from her signals or rushes the moment often breaks the very bond he hopes to build. Sensitivity here is not just a function of nerves, it's a mirror of how safe she feels. Men who understand this gain a powerful edge, not to manipulate but to connect. Because when you approach this part of her with awareness, patience, and attunement, she feels it. Not on the surface, but deep in the brain where attachment forms. And when a woman feels emotionally safe, her body responds in ways most men never get to see. Not because they didn't try hard enough, but because they didn't listen close enough. When a woman's nipples are visible, even subtly, it doesn't just catch attention. It sends a message, whether intended or not. In social psychology, this is known as nonverbal signaling. The idea that the body communicates information long before words are ever spoken. The human brain, especially the male brain, is wired to detect signs of openness, fertility, and receptivity. Visibility in this region unconsciously signals availability, softness, or in some cases, dominance through confidence. It's rarely about vulgarity, it's about instinctual communication. From a behavioral psychology perspective, these signals often provoke a mirror reaction in the male observer. The man's body begins preparing a response even before he's aware of it. Heart rate rises, attention narrows, and cortisol or dopamine levels shift, depending on the context. This is not desire by choice. It's the nervous system reacting to what it perceives as important biological information. For men who aren't conscious of these responses, this can lead to confusion, impulsivity, or even guilt. But here's where emotional intelligence changes everything. The man who is aware of his biological reactions does not shame himself for feeling them. He studies them. He becomes familiar with how his body speaks before his mind catches up. And in that self-awareness, he gains control. He doesn't suppress what he feels, he simply chooses how to respond rather than letting instincts dictate his behavior. That's what separates reaction from presence. In a society full of overstimulation, a man who can remain calm and focused while still sensing everything becomes rare. He doesn't fall into distraction or emotional chaos. Instead, he observes the signals, understands their roots, and decides who he wants to be in the middle of all of it. This is not about resisting nature, it's about mastering your role within it. And that kind of presence, grounded and fully awake, is far more attractive than any surface-level reaction. For many women, the chest is not just a body part, but a mirror of how they see themselves. It plays a major role in their self-image, often more than they openly express. Size, shape, sensitivity. These are all wrapped up in how a woman evaluates her femininity, attractiveness, and personal value. Cultural standards and media representations only intensify this pressure, creating a silent but constant comparison in her mind. The chest becomes symbolic of whether she feels desirable or invisible. Psychologically, this forms a feedback loop. A woman who feels insecure about her chest may carry that insecurity into her relationships. She might withdraw physically or overcompensate in other ways. On the other hand, a woman who feels confident in this area often radiates comfort with her body. But what most men miss is this: her behavior around you can reveal how she sees herself even if she never says a word. Body language becomes a direct window into her inner self-perception. This is why emotionally intelligent men don't rush physical connection. They observe. They notice subtle signs, hesitation, posture, tone shifts, and they adjust their presence accordingly. They understand that real attraction isn't just about what she looks like. but about how she feels in her own skin when she's around you. And that feeling can change based on how you respond. Are you affirming without objectifying? Are you present without evaluating? When a woman feels seen without being judged, she lets go of the armor. Her self-image softens, not because you complimented her, but because you gave her space to feel whole. That's why high-value men don't just touch the body. They shape the experience through their emotional awareness. And for many women, that's the first time they've felt fully accepted, without performance. That's not game. That's rare. The female chest isn't just a physical space. It often becomes a storage center for emotional memory. From childhood nurturing to adolescent self-awareness to adult intimacy, this area carries layers of experience. Moments of comfort, pain, trauma, or joy can all be subconsciously linked to how a woman feels about being touched or seen in this part of her body. What looks like a simple reaction might actually be tied to something much deeper in her past. Neuroscience confirms that touch-sensitive areas like the chest are directly connected to the brain's memory centers. This means that certain types of contact can reactivate emotional associations, some positive, others unresolved. A gentle touch may trigger a sense of warmth and trust, while an unexpected or careless one may awaken discomfort or emotional distance. These responses often happen before she can explain them or even recognize where they come from. This is why it's crucial for men to develop emotional sensitivity, not just confidence. Being physically assertive without being emotionally attuned can easily create disconnection. The woman might not verbalize it, but her body will react. She may freeze slightly, pull back, or simply shut down. A man who's paying attention will notice the shift, and instead of pushing forward, he'll slow down. He understands that intimacy is not just about permission, it's about presence. The men who stand out are the ones who make her feel safe enough to rewrite the script. They turn the chest from a space of tension or insecurity into a place of trust. They don't force closeness, they invite it through steadiness, respect, and attunement. And when a woman feels emotionally understood in one of the most vulnerable areas of her body, her connection deepens on every level. Not just physically, but neurologically. That kind of connection leaves a mark. For many women, the chest symbolizes more than just physical intimacy. Psychologically, it often becomes a space where the themes of control and surrender play out. Depending on her past experiences, personal beliefs, and emotional development, this area can either feel empowering or exposing. A woman who feels emotionally in control may guard this area closely. One who feels deeply safe may allow it to be seen or touched with greater openness. It's not about modesty or boldness, but it's about how much she trusts the moment. This duality makes the chest a powerful psychological zone. It can activate both desire and defense. When a woman opens herself in this way, it's rarely just physical. There's a silent decision being made. I trust you enough to let go. That's why men who chase physical access without building emotional safety often encounter resistance they don't understand. They think she's holding back, but really she's trying to protect something sacred. The key for men is to approach this space with presence, not pressure. Not because she's fragile, but because she's layered. When a man makes her feel seen, heard, and unjudged, her need to control disappears. That's when surrender happens naturally, not as submission, but as emotional alignment. And when that alignment is real, even the simplest touch can become electric, because it's no longer just about sensation, it's about shared energy. A man who knows this never rushes the moment. He reads the room, reads her breath, reads her stillness. He doesn't demand trust. He He earns it with calm, steady awareness. And that's what allows a woman to drop her armor. Not because she's weak, but because the space finally feels strong enough for her to relax into. That moment when control turns to connection is one of the most intimate experiences a woman can have, and the men who understand it never need to chase it. Many men assume women are unaware of how much attention their chest draws. The truth is, most women are very aware, and that awareness shapes how they present themselves in different settings. This isn't about vanity. It's about navigating a world where their body, particularly this area, often receives unsolicited focus. Whether she hides it, highlights it, or remains neutral, there is always a level of conscious or subconscious strategy at play. Social psychology explains this as impression management. A woman learns early on how her body is perceived, especially by men. She starts adapting, not necessarily to please, but to control the kind of reactions she receives. In professional spaces, she may downplay certain features to be taken more seriously. In social or romantic settings, she might accentuate her chest without saying a word. Her body becomes part of how she communicates boundaries, invitations, or distance, all without needing to speak. Men who lack emotional awareness often misinterpret these signals. They either assume everything is a green light or they ignore it entirely. But the emotionally intelligent man reads context, posture, and tone. He understands that how a woman presents herself is rarely accidental. It's not always about attracting others. Sometimes it's about managing safety, projecting confidence, or simply expressing comfort with her own body. That difference matters. The man who gets this doesn't judge or overreact. He doesn't project fantasy or frustration. He simply observes with clarity. And when a woman realizes that a man sees her without reducing her, respects her without obsessing over her body, it disarms her, because he becomes one of the few who can handle beauty without being consumed by it. That kind of man isn't just rare, he's remembered. For many women, the chest is not only an erogenous zone, but also a bridge to emotional closeness. When touched with care and respect, it has the power to activate not just arousal, but deep emotional openness. This response is largely shaped by early life experiences, where nurturing, safety, and human connection were often first felt through contact in this area. Over time, the brain begins to associate chest stimulation with trust, warmth, and attachment. This is supported by research in neuropsychology, especially studies on oxytocin. When this hormone is released, often during chest contact, it increases feelings of trust and connection. But this doesn't happen in isolation. The emotional context matters. If a woman feels emotionally disconnected, the same physical touch may fall flat or even create discomfort. That's why the most meaningful moments often happen when physical intimacy and emotional alignment are in sync. Some men rush into physical closeness thinking it will lead to emotional connection. But in reality, it's usually the other way around. A woman opens up physically when she feels emotionally safe first. And for many women, that safety is directly linked to how her chest is approached. Gently, gradually, with attunement. It's not just about stimulation. It's about how you show up in the moment, how present you are, and whether she feels fully seen. The men who understand this create lasting bonds, not through intensity, but through emotional intelligence. They recognize that this part of her body isn't just sensitive, it's sacred, and when a man approaches it with respect, steadiness, and care, something shifts. She doesn't just feel desired, she feels valued. That's the difference between chemistry that fades and connection that deepens. A woman's relationship with her chest is rarely shaped by her personal experience alone. It's often the result of generational beliefs, cultural norms, and unspoken family narratives. In some environments, the chest is over-sexualized and surrounded by shame. In others, it's desensitized or hidden behind modesty and silence. These early messages form a blueprint in the female psyche, shaping how she relates to her body in private, in public, and in relationships. This internalized conditioning runs deep. A woman might consciously embrace her body but still carry subconscious guilt, discomfort, or fear tied to how her chest is perceived. She may feel torn between confidence and self-protection. This tension can surface in intimate moments where what seems like resistance is actually a defense learned long before you entered her life. That's why understanding a woman's body means understanding the story it had to survive. Men who lack awareness may interpret hesitation as rejection or manipulation, but the emotionally attuned man sees nuance. He knows that true intimacy isn't about taking what's available, it's about creating space for what's been hidden. He doesn't just ask for closeness or empathy. He builds the trust that makes it possible. And that kind of man often becomes the first person she feels safe being fully present with, body and mind. By honoring the emotional history she carries, you create a kind of intimacy that goes beyond touch. You become part of her healing, not just her desire. And in doing that, you reach a depth of connection most men never access. Not because you moved faster or harder, but because you moved slower and deeper. That is the mark of a grounded man who truly understands the psychology of closeness. The female body isn't just about attraction. It holds emotion, memory, and meaning. What seems simple from the outside often carries years of experience inside. And the man who understands that moves differently. He connects with more than just the surface. If something here made you think, let me know in the comments. Which point surprised you? Which one felt real? I read everything, and this space is built for open minds. If you value this kind of real psychology-based content, subscribe and turn on notifications. We're just getting started. Until next time, stay sharp and stay conscious.